Welcome to episode 31 of the Confessions Podcast. I am the Alchemist, Chris Sweeney, and we are joined also, as ever, by the acid capitalist Hugh Hendry, but he is not in St. Bart's. He is in London town because he has been banished from the island. Paul McCartney has landed, and essentially there's only room on St. Bart's for one legendary bass-playing superstar, so Hugh had to go.
Only room for one scallywag at a time. No Roman, no Oog. And so we've jetted in Paul to make up the deficit. Maka, I didn't know that actually. I didn't know Maka was there.
Oh yeah, he's been frolicking about on the beach in one of these kind of, like kind of all-in-one swimsuit pieces. You know, it's got the t-shirt as well. You know, he's not on the beach shirtless. He's got a kind of it's a top thing on. You know.
Is he doing? I bet he's doing the Vilebrequin. Vilebrequin is that it's like their brand was based around turtles. I understand that their chief designer actually lives on St. Bart's, but their brand, which is shorts, got destroyed by lots of middle-aged politicians with paparazzi pictures being on holiday, and it was kind of fat, just unfit middle-aged guys became the portal. The brand messaging, and it's just like it was like who wants to? We mentioned Sarkozy. It was Sarkozy. It was Blair, etc. And hey, and I feel like no. I actually went into their store and I was like, God, I don't know why I'm here. I'm curious how you have responded to the destruction of your brand. I find. Is not the least sexy, appealing. That's my. I was like, that's my perception. Please challenge my perception. And they're like, would you care for a pair of Sarkozy turtle shorts? Oh, I'm out of here. I did buy a really nice shirt actually. Anyway, I took an executive decision. I was suffering island cabin fever. It had been 3 months. And so on Monday afternoon, I yanked the cord, and here I am in London. But the number of sleeping pills that I have to digest to travel economy cabin overnight, I'm still swimming to the surface. I'm still under the influence, if you will. So here's hoping for a sparkling display. Despite I will do anything but pack. I mean, it's funny because I bumped into can I call him a friend, an acquaintance, the founder of Joe. You like this stuff, Joe and the Juice. Casper is. Oh yeah, Joe and the Juice. I know that. Yeah. Well, Casper's a cool guy. I don't think I'm giving anything away. He stayed at Blanc Bleu and he now has his own wonderful gin palace there, and he was on the Island Hopper from St. Bart's, and he's got a really cool pair of acid capitalist sunglasses actually, but decked out, and he's got this LVMH overnight bag. He was off to Miami, and I was wearing a black. In Scotland, you call it a sinnet. I was wearing a black vest, and like that. And I didn't have LVMH as an overnight bag. I had my Marshy Ooh supermarket bag with my toothbrush and my computer, etc. And I was like, we do things differently, you and I. No one's on the island. Casper's not there. I'm not there. Roman has buggered off.
But Paul's there. Are you a fan of Paul's bass playing? Being a bass playing legend yourself, are you a kindred spirit? Do you appreciate Paul McCartney on the bass?
I hear nothing. My ears are leaden. It wasn't until those that Disney documentary, the Let It Be documentary. I didn't realize he was the bass man. There you go. It just shows you how out of it I am. Paul at his peak. Paul is just insanely good, but he has this other side which is syrupy and sentimental. Which when you're doing rock and roll, you can't be. You're going to be a badass. And Paul's never really been a badass, genius as he is. So, there you go. I'm going to buy a I'm going to buy a new bass. A bass? I'm going to buy a bass. Is that a fish? But I'm going to get. At Christmas Eve, I was like, yeah, nobody around here is going to buy me a present. So I went to the music shop and I bought myself two bass and an amp and a drum machine, which I haven't taken out the box. It's too complicated. But the second bass is 6-string. I'm like, 6 strings of guitar. I don't play guitar, I play bass. So that's going back. I'm going back to All Saints Road and asking if I can do a swap deal. Anyway, let's get this show on the road.
Well, it's been a big week, people. There's been a lot happening, but we had a great reaction last week, so thank you very much. People seem to like Tom Roderick adding a bit of sprinkling his magic dust on this concoction that Hugh and I have brewed up. So it was very good to see the reaction, so we appreciate all the comments, and hopefully we can keep it going, right, Hugh?
Yeah, and we I was on the Twitter platform. If in doubt, call a friend, and I've got lots of friends on Twitter. I hope we have. I'm sure we have lots of friends on this platform. And so, yeah, who would you like for us to engage with, bring on? Because my head is, I live within myself, and so I tend to be less aware of people. So, if you think of someone that that could mix it up with our AskSeed platform, then please leave suggestions on the whole YouTube channel. If you're listening audioly, I guess you can hit me. You can hit me up there, or you can hit us up on Twitter.
Exactly. Well, it's been a big week, a lot happening, but one thing I wanted to get your view on is Adam Newman is back. Now, he was the guy that led to he built up WeWork, which was a bit of an office sharing sort of venture, which became hugely, I think it was $47 billion at one point it was valued at, but it didn't end up at $47 billion, certainly. I think it ended up at $0 billion. But he's back. In terms of that, should we just maybe recap quickly on the WeWork thing? What was your feelings on that at the time? Could you see that coming? Did you think it was going to end in tears? Or were you also believing it was going to revolutionise the world as everyone else seemed to be?
Well, one doesn't wish to be unkind, but it would seem that he was an amplifier. So he wasn't an innovator. He was taking an existing concept, and a clever, smart concept, and then hyping it beyond reality. And certainly at the valuation levels where it peaked, it was in kind of Cathy Wood's ARC territory. And the lie to it, lie being a strong, perhaps too strong a word, but its vulnerability was very obvious at the time with regard to the valuation being attributed to existing and successful platforms that were doing it without fanfare, but were delivering that service year over year and expanding, and were trading at perhaps 1/10 of the valuation. So markets are tribal, and if you can provide leadership and you can provide momentum, markets are willing to trade well beyond reason for quite a while, and I think Adam demonstrated that.
Well, he's back in the news. I mean, he's on TV as well. People might have seen Apple TV because the whole WeWork thing's been made into a TV show, and Jared Leto's playing him. So, yeah, I mean, he's a bit of a character, but he's back with this thing called flow carbon. Now, it sounds a bit like the acid capitalist's genius plan, but maybe slightly different. I'll just give people a very quick paragraph. Flow carbon tokens are backed 1-to-1 by certified voluntary carbon credits that can be traded freely on crypto exchanges. By bringing these carbon credits on-chain, Flow is facilitating a market for credits that is liquid, transparent, and far easier to navigate than the traditional markets. So people can go on there, register their interest in...
Let's stop there just one, because let's take it one by one, or else it'll be harder for me.
Okay.
I've forgotten the first point. So his number one point here is easy to... I'm going to create a platform which is accessible.
Easier to navigate than the traditional
Easier
market,
to navigate, which is easier to buy or sell, is what he said.
Yeah.
So first, objection to that would be there are billion-dollar ETFs which trade in New York, the New York Stock Exchange, and in European exchanges. They are, I want to say, liquid for you and I. Would be more of an issue if you were $100 billion pension fund, but then you wouldn't need such collective vehicles because you could buy the underlying futures. And so those futures are very liquid should you be that monster hedge fund. For you and I, the liquidity is plentiful. It exists today, plentiful with these ETFs. And the trading cost for those ETFs is very modest. You purchase them with fiat money, like regular money. When you put something into crypto, you have to exchange your fiat into crypto. Or, I mean, it would be a logical riposte would be you could transfer your existing crypto and take it in. But I would think the majority to which, this statement is aimed at people who would be doing the former, which is fiat into crypto. And then when you would perhaps redeem, you would again have to come from crypto,
go back
into fiat. Mm-hmm. And then over the holding period, you'd be asked to undertake two risks, which is not very apparent in that number 1 point. You'd be volunteering for the risk that those permits will go up, but they can go down. And we have seen starkly that risk in the reverse in the past 3 weeks, where in the context of European permits, they traded, we call it the wides, were 95 European euros to 55. 55 was momentarily, but, thing halved on you. So that's a risk that people, of course, are willing to undertake, and that's a risk that we sponsor on this show. We think that those permits, which today in the European context trade at 75, and I think we can make a case that the valuation is considerably greater. But at the same time, you are underwriting the risk of where the particular cryptocurrency will trade over the holding period of your investment. So when you come to redeem, let's just use, it would be some derivative of Ethereum, Tether, etc. These are the cryptocurrencies which actually have a transaction utility, which would your Visa credit card would be connecting with. And let's replace that for just Bitcoin. Bitcoin in the last 2 years has had wides. It's traded from like 10,000 to 70,000 and kind of trades in the middle of that range today. People will be very dismissive of anything I have to say on crypto. But my only issue is I am very comfortable having an investment denominated in the US dollar. And I feel like if you were to ask me the wides in terms of where the dollar might trade vis-a-vis the euro or the British pound over the course of the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, I'm pretty sure I could nail it within a level which wouldn't upset me or discourage me, if you will. That I could underwrite that risk. I'm not so sure with crypto, which is to say something, let's say Bitcoin's trading at 35,000 today, which is, it's not, I think it's trading 38,000, but 35,000. It could easily, within the next 2-3 years, be trading at a minimum of 100,000. But at the same time, it might be trading at 10,000 or less. And probability-wise, again, perhaps it's my ignorance, but I'm sure many of the advocates of crypto will just say, shut up, Hugh. But for the majority of people, I think the probability assessment would be just now 50-50 in terms of one's engagement and knowledge of that sector. And so that's a huge risk that you have to layer on top. So I'm saying to you, and we'll take this further, but I'm saying to you that the number one solution solve, which is liquidity, is not a solution. The liquidity exists today. And then on top of that, he's imposing transaction costs on top, which are unnecessary. And on top of that, he's imposing Another risk, which is where the crypto price will be in X months or X years' time. So forgive me, Chris.
No, but he also said it's more transparent. He's saying it's liquid, transparent, and far easier. So, in what way is it more transparent, or is it transparent? Surely the existing things are. I mean, I'm a layman here, but isn't the existing thing a lot more transparent than dealing with crypto when you're if you're just a what do you call it a non-institutional investor? Surely this is less transparent for you getting involved in all this stuff.
It's a nonsense statement. So, what's the next statement?
Well, it goes on to say that Flow operates at the intersection of the voluntary carbon market and the Web3 ecosystem by originating large-scale forest conservation.
Okay, stop there. Stop. Okay, so really, I mean, how many words there? I mean, all that. Okay, continue. So it operates everything before it operates at the interchange, whatever.
The intersection of the voluntary carbon market and Web3 ecosystem. And it goes on to say, by tokenizing carbon offsets to create the most transparent and efficient revenue stream back to projects.
Okay. So the next flaw is crypto. These tokens are created via complex algorithms, which require an intense utilization of electrical capacity from electric grids, which is to say, require the burning and the production of carbon, which is attacking the ozone level. And so is it like, okay, is it like, so we have this idea where regrettably for the time being we are stuck with the production of hydrocarbons in order to produce energy, and that hydrocarbon energy engagement is creating carbon, which is obviously an issue, a big and a grave issue. So any solution which requires additional energy production seems to be going the wrong way. Yeah. So you don't require the addition of you don't have to run power stations to allow you to trade the existing ETF schemes. So not only do you not have to trade crypto, you can keep it fiat, so you can keep your trading costs really. And ETFs are very low cost. You know, these guys are not taking, the management fee is probably somewhere between 50 basis points and 75 basis points, which is very little. Hedge funds trade 200 basis points. Hedge funds take performance fees on top of that. None of that exists in these ETFs which exist. And you're not actually expanding the carbon footprint by encouraging people to trade. So again, it's like, carbon sexy is one of the things we've alighted upon. But it's sexy because you can make money and do good. And so far he's proposing an idea where you could certainly make money, but are you doing good? Less obvious.
We won't see you scrolling down to the bottom of that website and registering for the pre-sale, because it's saying that Flow Carbon is creating the first token-backed, one-to-one, buy premium, nature-based carbon credits. And it goes on again to say at the bottom, high transparency, high liquidity, high volume. And it's asking you to register for the pre-sale.
Yeah. So that's a really good PR company. And the bullet points are liquidity, transparency, just bing, bing, bing. Well, where do I sign up? It's baloney. Plus, actually, with regard to the transparency, because, off camera, we did do a tiny bit of prep where you did list that. And it is not obvious, actually, that any money raised via those tokens would be 100% used to permanently withdraw carbon permits. Like, it's not obvious that the tokens that would that would create the store of value that he's proposing would one-for-one lead to the permanent reduction of permit applications for industrialists or utilities within Europe, or indeed within the wider global platforms, because he does go along to mention that they might be embedded, they might be used in terms of buying carbon offsets And carbon offsets, I'm going to say it again, carbon offsets are a lie. They are phony. And no surprise that, I can't call him phony Adam, but susceptible Adam is all over it. Carbon offsets are the equivalent of taking blue pills. You continue to slumber. You pretend that you are a solution when instead you are dreaming of sheep.
Well, anyone wants to go on, then go onto the Flow Carbon website, and there's a light paper you can click, and it's almost like a big presentation with lots of graphics and flow charts and all that. I'd imagine you must have knocked a few of them out in your Eclectica days. No, did you have a team making these flow to give to potential investors? Did you have a wee team creating graphics and flow charts and fancy things to brochures? Yeah.
Yeah, fancy things, not so sure of. But yeah, no, we did a lot of that. I've got Twitter up and running. Bono is trending. I'm really excited about that. So ask a question. I'm going to look at why is Bono trending?
Well, maybe you, Hugh. Maybe someone had seen you storming about London and said Bono's in London. You know what I mean? Because you, as you say, you have been Bono's in Notting Hill or whatever. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I went to the world famous stylist whose studio is below the Westway, and John McPherson, actually from Glasgow, but stylist to Hollywood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I got my colour put back. I'm feeling blonde again.
You're back, baby. You're back.
I was 3 hours. Would you believe 3 hours?
3 hours. That is quite long. And you're a man that likes small talk when you're getting your hair done, or are you just kind of in the zone? Or do you like a bit of small talk?
I can't bear the. Can you imagine when you just? I don't know. It's very upstairs, downstairs. Where if you regard the person that cuts your hair as just someone that you don't, as a robot, you don't engage with. I find that awful. But no, John's wonderful. I always get great things from John. But with regard to the Pelosi, I gave it
Bono.
Away. Bono, Pelosi, who is a Pelosi, the head.
Nancy Pelosi, we're talking about here.
Nancy.
Yeah.
She is reading a poem written by Bono about the Ukrainian conflict. I mean, good old Bono. He's like, stick to the songs, my friend.
Maybe I can slip into Nancy's high heels, shall we say, because I can read from the Eclectica Fund's report of April 2007, and that fund manager, Hugh Hendry, was channeling Madonna when he wrote, "How high are the stakes? How much fortune can you make? Does this get any better? Should I carry on? Will it matter when I'm gone?" That is from her banger from 2006, How High? And that was in, as I said, in your fund's report in 2007. And I think it kind of foreshadows a bit about what you were saying right now, that, we can do good and make money, get rich and improve the world sort of thing. That's not just a pipe dream, it is achievable.
It's reflective of many aspects of today. It would have been pure genius, actually, if you had downloaded, it would have been coincidence. But I definitely had a few Bono U2 quotes in the monthlies. I was listening to a lot of the Brotherhood, and so I thought you were going to say, like a thief in the night, I see the world by candlelight, which may be appropriate also for today. But when and then giving you like the whole hedge fund backstories and whatever, that I think was written because not only did I get VIP tickets, whatever, but tickets for like a soccer football contest to watch Celtic and their European misadventures. But did I pay for it? Did the brokers pay? I think sometimes I pay for it, sometimes they pay for it. I'm not 100% sure, but I got the seats. There was back then, like Madonna's roadshow thing was insane. It was sick. I mean, it was so damn good. The dancing, the music, the visuals, and I swear, I could have touched her ass. Not that I was seeking to, but the proximity. And I felt uncomfortable by the proximity and by the gyrations. But I was my sexual awakening, which was very, very, as you know, we won't go there. It flared very, very early and disappeared as quickly as it emerged and was overtaken by a sight.
Went on hiatus, shall we say? Went on a short hiatus. Yes.
A Siberian winter, deep, long, and very, very cold and frigid. I remember the Virgin the Like a Virgin album, and you could pull out a bedroom poster. But the first and only bedroom poster I had was Madonna with a little necklace. But those feelings had passed by the time where she was wiggling her ass in my bed. And I was, and as you will know, I was more, I was very, very, I can multitask. I was like, damn, this show is really exceptionally good. But I had my, I was going to say I had my pager, I had my iPhone or whatever, probably it's my BlackBerry, and I was still checking the close. Remember, the US S&P close is 9 p.m. London time, so I'd be like, like that. But a really good performer. That's
what you were channeling. That's what you were channeling.
I was. Exactly. Yeah. I'd be channeling real life things, and she was coming through my mind. But that question, and what the date for that, Chris, was when?
That was April 2007. You wrote that, so kind of 15 years ago, pretty much, almost to the day.
But and what you don't know is that is when I had secured my seats on the Tesla rocket that was heading out of the planet Earth, because it was in April 2007 when I finally secured another means of profiting from the imminent collapse of the world banking system. And remember, the first steps, or the first indication of that collapse, came with the queues of depositors outside the Northern Rock British Bank, which was August of that year, only 5 months, 4 months in fact, because this would be the end of April. And in fact, I'd have been writing that in May. How high can this thing go? Your markets were still not only levitating but strongly pushing, into this unknown void. Banks, businesses which would be declared like a zero valuation within a year, we're still accumulating higher and higher valuations. And so that's the impetus for that question. In terms of its relevance today, there's a little bit of risk and return in terms of like how much do I want to risk to have it all? Haven't I just got it all? We live in an environment where some stocks like Apple, deemed to be devoid or certainly having very, very little commercial risk, are priceless. The Apple capitalization is greater than that of the German stock market. So we have some individual stocks which trade greater than the valuation of entire continents. And remember, this question is how much am I willing to risk? How high can we go? The S&P has, like all risk markets, there's been quite a ferocious risk recovery or relief rally which would define the week which is coming to an end. Is it real? Is that it? Is the worst over? At its wides, the S&P was down about 12.5%. We do this on a Thursday afternoon. I suspect the S&P now is down about 9. Maybe we've had much greater pools in terms of the gold price has fallen greater, which is the inverse of it's deemed to be risk on, risk off. The oil price has had a substantial pullback, $20 odd, etc. So these are reflective. We don't have Tom Roderick with us today, but I shared a coffee before taping this, and I do have a lot of Tom.
Was Tom you shared with coffee? Who paid for the coffee? Because you're his former boss. Does that mean you've got to pick up the tab, or has he got to pick up the tab because he owes you for helping him out in his career?
Oh my God! There's the deficit of owing is there's no deficit. So to answer your question, I bought the first, and then I become this like real coffee monkey. I need another, and so he got the next one. So which was very nice. Unnecessary, but he wanted to. So my point is, just never be a dick for a tick. Like life's too short. If someone wants to buy you something, but if someone wants to get dinner, fine. Like get the next one. Talking of which, and again, this is well off chart. It was my birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. I only mentioned that, and birthdays are irrelevant. But I had dinner. I had dinner for 6 people last night in a fancy restaurant, in a fun neighborhood restaurant in Notting Hill, and I was like, hey, bottle of champagne. And some Casamigos tequila for the patron over here. And, we had a good old healthy meal. And the bill was half of what I paid on Saturday having lunch with no wine, no champagne, but tequila. Lunch for 3 people at Cheval Blanc in St. Bart's last Saturday. I mean,
half! How is that possible?
London is cheap, and I was like, dude, like you shove 30, there's 12.5% tip, which is built into your price. I was like, tag on $30. He's like, I can't. He's like, thank you very much, but we're not allowed. I was like, London is cheap, or St. Bart's is nosebleed expensive. A combination of the two, perhaps. Sterling's cheap.
Well, very interesting, very interesting. Well, can I ask you about hedge fund thing just before because there's a few hedge fund permutations of talking about this, get rich, do good. And one thing I wanted to ask you about was our old friend, well, I don't know if he's an old friend, the Wizard of Oz, Greg Coffey, his asset management hedge fund have redeemed all their Russian investors, which I'm assuming in sort of normal English is, he said, take your money back. It's a bit much, I shouldn't have it. Here it is back, and I'm moving on without you.
Indeed, so that would have been kind of more interesting if they'd revealed what percentage of the client base they had forced a redemption on. Because you can say it'd be kind of a cheap headline if it's just one client and it's not even 1%.
Well, the quote
of your
is
assets.
As a precaution to reduce the potential impact to the £4 billion macro fund. That was all we were told.
Yeah. I think it was a very cheap and very, very effective PR stunt that has us discussing it. And I just reject calling him the Wizard of Oz. Greg made it. I caught the commodity bull market right at the beginning of 2003 with the launch of my fund. We'd been trading it at Odie in the 3 years prior to that. Greg holds down a heck of a lot of beta. He did well because for my sins, I've got this kind of rabbit or magpie mind, and I can get distracted. And I was doing gold, and I should have just kept amplifying all my commodity investments because they really, I was there 2003 very full. I was mucking around really 2003 to 2006, and I should just have been metal to the pedal or pedal to the metal. I never know which way around that should be.
Pedal to the metal.
Pedal to the metal, and to his credit, he was. And then when that market, so he didn't really have an answer for the 2008 thing except to retire, go back to Australia and be very rich. And then he came back. I'm not quite sure how his performance has been since then, but and some legendary stories about again, if the Joe and the Juice, if Casper was trading with his LVMH overnight bag and I'm trading Marsh U, Greg's legendary stories would be, 5 guys in a white special op or in a black special ops van would precede him, whatever fancy villa he would alight upon, and he would set up this whole wall, this whole intelligence unit, because the wizard was arriving. I mean, I say that. I say that. Like, was I there? Did I see that van? Did I see that? But that's one of the kind of stories I heard. Sometimes you can try too hard. You can. I used to do it with reams of photocopying paper coming out overnight. I remember being in the mall games, and younger folk just won't remember these scrolls of the cheapest, nastiest paper, and I'd be sweating, and like I couldn't read it because my thumbs would be deleting lines, but I'd literally sit there and I have to unroll as if I'm in Robin Hood, and it would be the overnight prices of everything coming up a long time ago.
Very cool, very cool. Well, and his hedge fund's involved, but there's also Oak Tree Capital, who I think there's rumours, or more than rumours, reports that they're going to be involved in a bid for Chelsea, which is, for anyone that's not a football fan, Roman Abramovich, Hugh's neighbour, has been basically he's getting forced to get rid of his football club Chelsea, and there's now various bidders getting involved, and one of the hedge funds, Oak Tree Capital, other hedge funds I think are mentioned. So are hedge funds, do you think, really circling this Russian market at the moment? Is it not a risk, but taking things like this on, like buying these assets and getting involved? Because isn't there a bit of risk, just sort of getting involved in all this?
Well, hedge funds, the domain of hedge funds is risk, is the understanding, and therefore with it the underwriting of risk, making assessments and being able to assign probabilities to conceivable outcomes. Oak Tree, super smart operators, but operating in a world where there's just so much liquidity. So something like taking on Chelsea, so I have no idea. They seem to be talking about 3-4 yards worth of I was going to say value as a transaction price. That would seem very steep. Probably it should be 2. I can't imagine Oak Tree trying to do anything well beyond 2, maybe close to 3.
And Roman's writing off his 1.5 yards of a loan. He's writing that off. So I guess it'll be debt free when they get it then.
It was never his in the first place, but that's beside the point. But I mean, hey, you have got a forced seller, and I'm sure behind the scenes, there are various maneuvers saying, if you don't, the value of this franchise can be dramatically brought down, reduced by a menacing. Chelsea owes its existence for the to the United Kingdom and to the government, who have for many years looked asunder and now are focusing on it. So it's a very vulnerable valuation. That he's countered that by saying, "Hey, whatever I get, I'm going to write off the debt. And whatever I get is going to be a charitable donation." And to Ukrainians, kind of like that. And it was like, "Well, what did you say?" Because initially, and he got the successful headline plant, which is, "Whatever I make, I'm going to give it to the patronage of trying to deal with the Ukrainian situation." And then when you look at the details, maybe we don't really know. So I can well understand why hedge funds would be getting involved. That would seem to be an intriguing place. And with the sizes, you've seen, like, so non-hedge funds, it's a consortium typically of other rich folk. Like, you might be rich, but no one's kind of looking to lay down like 2 or 3 billion to take on a football club just from their own means. Even if you are, worth 4 or 5 billion, that's a lot. So, that makes a lot of sense.
And how active do you think hedge funds will be? Because, I mean, right now there's so much Russian stuff being either, frozen, it's been forced sellers. In terms of actually in Russia, but what moves will hedge funds be making? Will they be looking at Russian assets within Russia to buy? Is there value there? How much kind of stuff can you get involved in?
Where there's value, there's no value as such there just now. There's no value as long as they remain a pariah state, in the sense that I'm sure that one could find very, very attractive assets in North Korea, which are presently trading at, a cent on the dollar. And that's kind of right, because it's very unlikely to perceive of North Korea being assimilated into our world. And that's presently the situation with Russia. Like under their present guidance and leadership, they have rejected our world. Now there are plentiful, very, very attractive assets. But for as long as they reject our world and therefore are subject to the exclusion orders that have come through via various economic sanctions, you lack a catalyst. Now, I do, I have friends. I had lunch with someone the other day and claimed that they were the last buy before they pulled the plug out of the exchange of a lot of Russian listed oil and gas and other energy and commodity stocks on the London exchange, and my friend was hosing that down until the end. But they fell the best part of 98, 99%, and so that is something where one has to imagine that Russia will reassimilate, will come back online. And so morally it's a very clouded compass. But if you could buy something a cent on the dollar and it comes back and it gets relisted, it's not getting relisted at the price you paid for. It's getting relisted, many, many times higher. But presently and sadly, we don't know when that date is. And that's why it's complicated.
Yeah, no, it is very, very complicated. I mean, one thing what Tash also about was there was a graph. Now, I didn't come up with it, but it's been generated and it's online. A few financial people have passed it around, and it's looking at Russian crude loading from the Baltic. And if you look at the figure, it's never been higher. There's more oil disappearing off, and it seems to be China and India are buying more of it. And according to this graph, also the Netherlands. They're the three places that have increased their orders. So, I mean, are we almost having some people trying to do good and some trying not to do good? Like, do you think those people that are trying to buy something a cent on the dollar will keep Putin going? Will allow him to stay in there, allow the war to keep going, and stop the other avenue of people freezing things and trying to change things?
There is scope and an inevitability for both, but by far the greatest influence is the exclusions. I mean, when you mention Netherlands, that must be that's a flag thing. That's that's like ships might they trade under particular flags. I would think the Dutch government is not buying Baltic oil. The sanctions are profoundly powerful. Okay, whatever you're reading about India and stuff. I tell you, I spend now more time deep reading Twitter than I do newspapers. The intel, the depth of knowledge that you can tap into daily. I mean, I sound like we should be sponsored by Twitter, but it's far greater than you get in newspapers. And that's newspapers now, that their economic model does not allow them to to be able to support the excellence in depth, and that's just how it works. But today, for instance, because I mentioned this because you were saying China and India, this is a suggestion of cheating, evading these restrictions, not being part of the team, and the from these flight trackers, because you were talking about it, I think a week or so ago with the Elon Musk, and you're saying to this guy, "Hey, look, stop publishing my
namesake." Data. I think it's Jack Sweeney. I think he's a young lad out in America, and he's got the tracker on Elon Musk, and now he's got the tracker on all the oligarchs' planes and jets and all that, and you can see where they are and things like that around the world at any time.
Talking of which, so today it had, I think he's called Lebedov. Who cares? But the Russian foreign minister. Now you're good with these names; they're all your mates, Chris. But his plane took off en route to China and turned back halfway.
Whoa, okay.
Questions kind of raised there. And again, that's the flight tracking data. The Russians aren't sharing that. And that follows up from a week where, there was the revelation that the Russians had asked for military aid to the Chinese. And that there were high-level meetings with counterparties, US Chinese counterparties in Europe. And then you hear of those stories. And it has to be said, the risk of being excluded from the free world is enormous. And it's not obvious. So the UK, the British economy is kind of down on its luck. And actually I'm going to put a chart on this thing. And it's the chart of the UK economy and the growth rate that has in GDP, the economic growth rate that has been achieved since the debacle of the great financial crisis. So remember, we're quoting Madonna in April of 2007. So it shows the economic growth since then versus trend. And the charts like that, which is to say we've traded sideways. The UK's done a lot of self-harm in its departure from Brexit, from Europe. The Brexit thing has certainly not helped, and we've had COVID, and now we've got this Russian thing, and so the result, and then there's been austerity from the government as they kind of mistakenly or prudently kind of try to bring their debt levels down. The economy's gone nowhere, and yet the UK economy is greater in size than the Russian economy. Russian economy, I want to say, is 1.3 trillion, or was very much past tense, $1.3 trillion. To put that in context, the US is a 22 trillion dollar economy.
I think Italy's got a bigger economy than Russia. I'm sure I checked that a few weeks ago. I think Italy had a bigger economy than Russia.
Yeah, well, I mean, the workaround on that is, if you think of everyone attending the G7, that they tend to be the 7 largest economies, and certainly the Italian Prime Minister gets invited there. And the Chinese economy, I don't know if we're using purchasing power, etc., but probably is $15 trillion, I think, in comparison to the US being 21. I think if you were doing apples for apples, and so I want to say, maybe am I making up? I'm using too many 15s, because I think the Chinese share of global GDP is about 15%, and so I want to multiply 15 by 6 or whatever. I want to say the global GDP is somewhere between 100 and 150 trillion dollars. Do you want to trade exclusive rights with 1.3 to the exclusion of 100 trillion? I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you want to invade Ukraine. I mean, people do dumbass, stupid stuff, okay? But you can see how the metric kind of is a little bit off. So that flight returning is a curiosity bubble, okay? Another big thing went down this week, Chris, which is overnight. The Chinese went, excuse me, is this on? Hello, Mr. Market. Just a little message. We love you. We got a bit cranky the last 2 years, and we love you, right? Which is to say, some state council, so if you think of Russia, everything is just, it's one Egypt at the top, one leader, and then all these puppets but so they brought out this state council basically saying, you got us wrong. We don't want the delisting of Chinese ADRs. Like we want them on US stock exchanges. We want them on our stock exchanges. We want you to trade them on both platforms. Regulation, we hear this thing that we're not offering audited account. You know what? Done. It's yours. We're going to do it. Guys from Beijing, from the heart, we love you. I And that's very interesting. I mean, I think it's meaningless because, it comes from a meaningless, it doesn't come from Z, right? The power is Z. But, he's clearly, he has authorized it. That's big, in terms of market reaction, Alibaba, which was one of the top 10 highest market capitalization stocks. And we were discussing 2 weeks ago in the context of Bill Miller, and since we discussed it, it jumped off another diving boom, deep dive down. But yes, was it yesterday? My days are frazzled. It was Tuesday, maybe. I was traveling, and I was tweeting all day in an insane manner. You had two news items. So you had yin and yang. There was a kind of fakish story that the Saudis were now like, hey, we'll sell oil to our Chinese brothers. You were not taking the call from the White House, but a bit of kind of politics, because is Biden, is the new American, are they doing another pivot back to, favoring Iran? It kind of makes sense just now, bring them on stream, trade one devil for another. Why not? Take out Russian oil, bring in the Iranian, play around, less sanctions for one, maybe. And, who does that affect? The Saudis. So they're like, you know what? We're going to sell our oil to the Chinese. Boom! Days of the dollar are over. And just briefly on that, Saudi has a dollar peg, so its currency is pegged to the US dollar. And the Chinese renminbi or yuan is pegged to the US dollar. So when you trade Saudi rial for Chinese yuan, guess what you're transacting in? US greenbacks, otherwise called dollars. Meaningless, and I think it was later rejected as a story. But the other story was this kind of about face kind of Chinese story, and Alibaba was up 36%. 36% on the day. Massive, enormous rally. Now, why? I think so. My reaction to that, and what I put out on Twitter was, I don't feel good about that. That to my mind feels like the anarchy of 2008, where events, the dominoes were just going, and it was accelerating. I think it was like so fast, taking everything out, and governments were like, "Gee, this is faster, and quickly it's going to consume us. It's going to be much bigger than our ability to deal with it." And so, and desperate people start doing desperate things. And back then you had you had the charade, you had the sin of these short selling bans on financial stocks. Preposterous. But, led to days where bank stocks would have been up 36%. I mean, I remember a day where I lost, I'm proud of it, it was just so crazy, but I lost 20% of NAV. That never happened to me before. I'm low, but this thing was so beyond the pale. And that's what we just saw this week from Beijing. And so I'm connecting dots to other bad times where it didn't stop those dominoes. It took people out. If you look at volume, the volume that traded in the Alibabas and the Tencents of this world. Now, statistically, very, very, very cheap stocks. I mean, Alibaba had given back all of the gains that it had from listing, all evaporated. I would say that's right. It only survives on the underwriting of the Chinese state. It only has a franchise owing to Z. If Z says you're not part of the club, you have very little value. So I don't dismiss it. But that statement says the Chinese really, really worried. And really, that's the takeaway from this show, is stock markets go up and down. That Alibaba went up 36%. US banking stocks went up by that magnitude only 3-4 weeks later. And I'm not suggesting that time frame, but only 3-4 weeks later to fall 80%. Yeah. All you done was you brought forward future buying, and you concentrated on one day. The stock moves to a level where within a week you go, I'm going to short it again, But it seems to reveal, what does it reveal? Because if you were looking at Chinese property stocks and you were to look at the debt, these things have been, they've fallen considerably in the last month. Boom! These things in China were financial assets were collapsing in a manner which is along the lines of the flight of fancy that we had of this major recession 2024 in China, brought on by these unsold properties, this 91 million of vacant properties. Along the same lines, the Chinese government came out and said, we said we were thinking about doing this property tax. What are you going to do? They are, so it's all cloaked in a positive embrace reflection of the US. Well, US, in terms of our rule of law, how we do things. But the motivation factor is what's going on in my head. I think they're really worried. Again, it's one of the things where my bugbear is the one disconnect has been the value of the currency. The value of the currency has matched the strength of the US dollar vis-a-vis all other currencies. But with risk assets blowing up, with the government kind of actually revealing that it's actually very worried. The zero COVID thing, disaster. Again, one of the major profound news items of this week has been, you've got about 50 million people in
the lockdown in China. Yeah, they're having big time lockdowns. We're almost getting rid of. I think Heathrow Airport's now got no masks. We're going the opposite way, and they're locking down, and we are almost, I think, restriction free pretty much in Europe.
Yeah. Like we said at the beginning, herd immunity people would be the solution. They never got anywhere close to it. One of the problems of having 1.4 billion people, which is nothing to say how effective their form of boosters. But I don't think they got enough. I don't think they got enough backs. Think like Hong Kong's going off the charts just now. Really worrying and sad incidents. But if you're, so the most vulnerable age to the body snatching thing is obviously, if you're well past your 70s. You can be at that age and be a Hong Kong citizen, and you've only lived under, if you will, Western, the flag protection of the UK, and essentially you've lived in a Western democracy. And you think of the reservations that ordinary folk have about the vaccine, and you've seen the lens of our cousins in Ottawa and their trucks, and honk for a truck driver. Imagine being 70 plus, having that cynicism about the medication, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, and then being offered not the Pfizer, but being offered the red syringe. You wouldn't be queuing up. You would not be queuing up for that stuff. And now you see the things like very, very virulent. That's speculation on my part. So, but these, things are happening, coming unstuck. We have, so where are we with capital markets? Where are we with capital markets? Because where are we with the Russian thing? Give me, you're on top of the media beat. What happens next in the Russia-Ukraine thing?
Well, from what I can see, the experts or whatever so-called experts are saying is that they reckon that, with Zelensky saying, okay, we're not going to join NATO, that's given Putin some sort of PR win that he can take back to Russia. But they say that he'll have to take those two republics that have declared themselves as independent.
Well, the Russians have declared.
Yes. When they say independent, I think we can put that in quotation marks. But I think there's a thinking that Putin realizes, or the people around them realize they can't win, but then Ukrainians can't win either without any extra forces. So it's just going to be a war of attrition. So it looks better now for Putin to go back with that part of Ukraine carved out, and the fact that Ukraine now has said we won't join NATO. So I think people are hoping that will be some deadlock, and that they've been talking, haven't there? There's been some comments back and forth from each side saying that, well, okay, we're getting a bit closer to talking, and blah blah, something can be hammered out here. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. Obviously, all this is through the lens of media and people reporting from there. So you're obviously going through channels of people trying to put stuff out, but that seems to be the general narrative that I'm picking up.
And likewise. So two things just to mix it up. So one of the things I'm very conscious of is picking up the pollution of, and everything you read has an angle, has a prejudice. Anything that's written has prejudice.
Of course, impartiality does not exist. People in the media always say you're impartial, but you can't be impartial because we're all human.
It's impossible. So, and that's very difficult as a risk manager, because you really have to you've got to be as untainted as you can be. So you've got to limit yourself to news bombs, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I'm very conscious of is the West is very, very effective with regard to propaganda. Probably better. I mean, the Russian effort seemed, they had that fake Zelensky. Hey, I surrender. Vlad was right. And then you check the pixelation. And you guys are hopeless. But that
wasn't a good deep fake. No, because it wasn't a good. If anyone wants a good deep fake, they should check out the Queen Elizabeth II's alternative Christmas message in 2021. That was really good. That was an amazing deep fake. That was really, really well done. It was on Channel 4, broadcast on the UK, and it's brilliant. It's really, really good. But anyway, sorry, carry on, Hugh.
So I'm definitely, and I probably want to take it on, but I've got to make sure I'm pushing back about this. This is a disaster. They were meant to take Kiev within the first week. They're bogged down. Every day is $2 billion. They've lost. We don't know what they've lost in terms of casualties, but it doesn't seem outrageous to think that it's a figure 5,000-6,000 in terms of military. They're losing high-ranked generals. To put that 5,000-6,000 in context, it's more than the U.S. military suffered in the Afghanistan conflict. It is Vietnam was, I want to say 18,000. I'll fact check that. It's a big number. It's more than the Russians lost during their Afghanistan campaign.
Yeah.
But am I just picking up propaganda? I don't think it's a huge step to say this thing has not gone. It's not proceeded in the manner that Vladimir would have hoped for. In terms of the NATO thing, that's an easy give, and that's being it's gone. It's being broadcast. Let's be like Sweden. Let's have the neutrality of Sweden or Austria. We don't have to go to Switzerland. Sweden and Austria have this thing. We've never joined NATO. We're neutral, and given it's right on the border with Russia, he's already stood up said that. Then there's this kind of really weird story about the Polish MiG fighters, and again. Yeah. That's it's not fake news, but that's a game. I'm not quite sure what that game is, right?
Well, they want the Americans to do it for them. Basically, they didn't want to do it themselves. They wanted the Americans to do it. The Americans said, they wanted to give their jets to the Americans to give to the Ukrainians. So if they got shot down, they technically be American jets, and Poland wouldn't have to. It was a wee bit kind of standing behind your big brother, wasn't it, in the playground?
No, that sounds contrived, but actually that is smart, because in the reading of escalation, the safer route was to have it done via to gift it to the Americans. Then the Americans.
But why did the Americans? Why would they need the Polish jets? Wouldn't they just send their own jets? I mean, it seemed that. Well, why did Poland come up with that harebrained scheme to me?
Well, indeed, because it does seem an invention. It's this. Yeah. Hey, the Ukrainians have only been trained to fly MiGs Really? And like people accept that. Boom. Oh yeah. So they need some MiGs. Really? I mean, really? I mean, Ukraine has been in this situation for the agreement to split with Russia was signed in, I think, 1994. And what? They've only been flying MiGs. Like, no one thought to give them a simulator even for US.
And they're also quite a technically adept nation. I mean, I think a lot of people maybe, I mean, I don't know if any people, I mean, I'm not an expert in Ukraine, but from what I've read over the last few weeks, spoken to people, they're actually quite IT technology-wise, they're quite an advanced nation. You know, they're pretty big on that sort of stuff. You know, they're not a sort of, I mean, not that they'd be backward, but they're not a sort of anti-technology or anything like that. You know, they've embraced the new world, you know.
Well, that's actually a legacy. Is it a legacy? It was certainly something that was supported and encouraged during the Soviet era, where the empire was split into, well, you do this, you do that, and the Ukrainians were at the high value added engineering. Like, you want something made, you want something precise, you know, like precision engineering and stuff. That would be up there in the Ukrainian, Chernobyl and the nuclear things. No, it's not coincidence that they were predominantly located in that direction. So yes, there is that intellectual goodwill, if you will. And then aircraft, you don't need aircraft. And again, what supports this notion that the Russians are struggling? This is modern war. This is like, this isn't the First World War or the Second World War, like when you put tanks against tanks. When you put tanks into countries, a tank is this big, slow-moving thing. You're like, hey, I'm over here, and it's like, no, I'm up here. You know, the guy's blind. He doesn't know where you are, and he's a big thing. You've got this bazooka. The Americans are giving them these kill drones. You put them up, you're like, if you see a tank, send me an SMS, and you're sitting there, you're having breakfast. I was like, is this a tank? You're like, yeah, destroy. You know, it's not wise. So you don't need MiGs. You don't need fighter jets. They've got hundreds of really nasty. And it's like, well, how'd you get it into the country? I mean, what was it? You had 3 European prime ministers took a train to Kiev this week. So don't tell me it's hard to put a couple of bazookas in the business class section, you know. So again, unfortunately for a macro conversation, this isn't really taking us anywhere, but it takes us to the level, you've got to screen, you've got to be conscious of, you know, people are trying to force an agenda, and you've got to understand your agenda. You've got to have your narrative that makes sense. I don't see. I don't see a quick resolution for all of that diplomatic language. You don't see it in terms of the Russian representation. It's really. Yeah, until you see a change in the delegates who are attending these. So there was, you know, the guy who went halfway to China and came back. He was sent to Turkey, but he was only sent to Turkey because, you know, Erdogan, however you pronounce it, but you know, the Prime Minister of Turkey, he was a bit of a strong guy, and he's got a bit of an open dialogue with Putin. He's like, if I'm hosting it, do not send me those Muppets. I do not want Muppets wasting my time. Send me someone legitimate. So they sent the foreign minister, but he made it plain. It's like, I'm not here to make any deal. So, but
doesn't that link also? I mean, we're talking about big figures. I mean, we've seen right now the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, he jumped on a plane, it seemed at very short notice, and he went off to sing for his supper in the UAE and Saudi Arabia this week, where he sort of had to make a play of, I really don't know what he was doing there. I mean, it seemed to me that basically he was saying, turn on the oil, because obviously America's not as affected by all this because they don't need Russian oil, whereas Europe is really stuck in a vice. So did that surprise you that it seemed quite embarrassing for him to go over there and sort of tap dance for these to dictators when we're being so harsh with Putin and freezing assets, and we've shown we've got the stick. He was over there with a carrot.
Yeah, I don't think many people have a very high regard for Bojo these days, but again, you're neglecting something.
Yeah.
But you're neglecting something, because it's a chess game that's going on. So what else happened? Think, what are you missing, Chris? Think strategically.
About Boris Johnson.
About the two characters. So the characters there were the UK and Saudi Arabia. What are you missing?
Iran? No.
Keep going.
The British Iranian woman that had been locked up for 6 years finally returned home out the blue on. It was last night, actually. Thursday morning UK time. 2 British citizens came home that had been.
But your deal having been. The deal was done Tuesday or whatever, you know. So the deal was done coinciding with Bojo being in Saudi, right? So, and what's the deal that they paid 400 million in restitution for a tank order, which was a function of the Shah of Iran and the change in the administration. And so the Iranians said there was there was an outstanding debt due to the Iranians, which, you know, the UK government, you know, up yours. UK international courts at the highest level decided that, given the sanctions, that there should be no interest paid on that. And then I think they seem to work out a means whereby they could pay that money with it being not an escrow, but where there was kind of perhaps more transparency, where it would be humanitarian payments rather than, you know, boosting, you know, the Mujahideen, whatever, in their encounters with us. So that's happening because, again, we're back to the whole notion of, you know, the UAE and Saudi not picking up the phone to the White House, because it seems like they're going to do a deal. They're going to bring oil onto the system, which would be against their best interest. So, yeah, there's a lot of complex things going on. It's still a revulsion that the US is importing any foreign oil. That is fills me with revulsion. It's a function of being complacent. It should be rectified. It can't be rectified immediately, but you can take the actions which rectify it, whereby within a decade that situation does not exist. So with markets, we've had a rally. Peace and defining peace. So it would seem that urban warfare is not going to bring joy, and it's not going to bring legitimacy, and it's not obvious it's going to provide that it's going to provide anything good to Russia. And this has been 3 weeks, and things just been closed down. I mean, like and there are demonstrations, you know. And again, we had that unbelievably brave woman on TV, you know, with the caption.
But I must say,
yeah,
I don't know if you watch Good Morning Britain. Again, sorry, a lot of my references are British because I obviously live in the UK. But there was a Ukrainian woman on who's an expert in media and spin, and she was saying that she thinks that there's a belief that was a stunt by the Russian services, that woman was a plant. And she was actually doing that for propaganda and not out of genuine reasons. I don't know if I have no information on that, but there's a
again, let's deconstruct that. So what would lead you to back that up is she got fined, like $200,
very little,
very little, and so that looks like it's a very tolerant system. Hey, you know, but you know, $200 go away. But the biggest, like, can you imagine Europe? The UK had invaded France or whatever, you know, Belgium. And on the BBC, someone's like, you know, your government, we are led by criminals, the war is a phony. I mean, it's not obvious. You know, so
it was just a view. It was just a view. It wasn't my view, but it was just. I just found it quite surprising that this woman had this view. I never even thought of it, really, to be honest.
No, I don't know. I had Good Morning Britain intel relayed to me in a secondary, more respectable manner, but clearly I was I was subject to that interpretation. So we have to wind this up because I really need a wee. And so it's a week where Ukraine put the hey, NATO, goodbye NATO, it was never going to happen in the first place. Russians are still there. Bloodletting continues. Urban warfare is a mess. And there's still this awful containment, almost like a kind of First World War, where you just containment just creates more destruction. It would seem he can't back down. Just say, hey, Crimea is yours. He wants those two independents. The Ukrainians are just not willing. And then for the Ukrainians, you've lost so much already. Why do you give in now? Like it would seem that in terms of the power of loss is greater on the Russian side. But it would seem that it's become asymmetrical, that there's more incentive to be braver on the Ukrainian side than on the Russian side. Because there's another rumor that the Belarusians, they're like, our soldiers, they all said no. And so, Syrians and whatever, it doesn't look good. Yeah, so I don't...
12,000 Syrians, apparently. They're getting paid, I think it's like $3,000 a month, which is 50 times the salary they get in Syria, apparently, to go and fight on behalf of the Russians.
Are they getting $3,000 or are they getting 3,000 rubles worth of dollars, which in 2 weeks is going to be worth 2,000 and then, so yeah. So there's a kind of disturbing battle fatigue, like, oh, well, it's just the norm now, we get used to apartment buildings blown up and stuff. But if I was risk managing, I think the biggest issue actually is that Chinese statement. I think the oil price coming back from, 120, 130, those high levels, and it's come back 20% maybe. How much of that is people looking at GDP growth in China and going, and how much can we be confident that the Chinese are actually in control? And again, how confident can you be that there is a face-saving proposition to allow Vlad to retreat? I'm not confident, and so I would imagine there would be another leg down. Oh, and of course the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. They raised interest rates. The Bank of England raised interest rates. If anyone could tell me how higher interest rates and hitting people on their mortgage payments can actually help this situation today, I'd be very intrigued. You had the Federal Reserve. I can't open this too long, or else I will wet myself. But trying to emulate Paul Volcker, who is a heroic central banker because he was just so beyond the pale in terms of courageous and actually being quite mad, but in a good sense. But that was 1979, and our world is fundamentally different today than it was in 1979. And the principal difference is that we all have debt, and talking about 6-7 interest rate increases. I mean, China's this enormous thing is going boom, 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 boom. Europe is having to deal with this nut job, and its energy prices is going do, and you're going to hike rates 7 times. Get out of here with your Volcker analogy. Anyway, because I'm going to wind this up.
Throws a bone. But before your bladder bursts, have I got time for the Wheel of Fortune, or can you?
Too many questions. Hit it. If you want to do it, ask me.
Right, quick number. Go. What number? With you 1 in 59. Go for it.
47.
Oh, Christ. 47. Have you got a hedge fund story about Madonna? You've done it. Okay, he's done it. The man who can see around corners. That is
done.
They didn't script that. That is a man who can see around corners. That has made my year. Oh, that is seeing round corners, Hugh. That was impressive. And there really was Madonna on that list. I'm not just saying that. Anyway, people, it's been a fun week. Who knows what we'll find at Acid Capitalist next week? Europe, the Caribbean, who knows? But he's here, I'm there, and we wish everybody well. We'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.